guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel, Books with Bree. I'm Brianne, and today I am bringing you guys my monthly wrap-up for the month of March. So I'd like to preface this video by saying I did not realize how many books and novels that I read in the month of March. I read 6 novellas, 5 novels, and 2 mangas, which I did not expect, and I didn't even realize I had read that many. I went into filming this video feeling like I had read very little until I sat down to count up how many books I would be talking about with you guys today. So with this month being a big reread of the Cassandra Clare books for me, there are quite a few Cassandra Clare books in this wrap-up, and all of the novellas I will be talking about are by Cassandra Clare. So to start with, I first read The Wicked Ones, which is part of the Ghosts of the Shadow Market collection. I rated it a 3 out of 5 stars because there were characters in that novella that were mentioned in the history in the Mortal Instruments series that I just didn't enjoy how my view on those characters changed because of the story that this novella told. This novella takes place in the time of Valentine and his circle, as Valentine is trying and starting to build this big following right before the big battle at the Accords between Downworlders and Shadowhunters. So this was a 3 out of 5 for me, but I know there are tons of people out there who enjoyed it much more for the aspects that the character Jem brings in, but it just was not enough for me. Then I read Son of the Dawn, which is the following novella in the Ghosts of the Shadow Market series, and I again rated this one a 3 out of 5 stars. Yes, it was an enjoyable read, and it was good to go back to these characters that we already knew and see them in a new way that we weren't able to in their own series in the Mortal Instruments because they were already grown. But I feel like there were aspects of this that were kind of redundant and repeated things that we already know as readers from reading any of the other series. And so I felt this one just lacked a little something, and it was harder to get into than some of the other ones. So that was my main issue with this, but it was enjoyable to see all these characters we knew again and just to experience a different part of their life that we hadn't seen before. The next one I read was The Land I Lost, and I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. It was my absolute favorite out of all of the novellas that Cassie Clare has released so far, and this one follows Alec Lightwood after the events of the Mortal Instruments series as he heads to Buenos Aires to help out Jem and Tessa, and in the process ends up meeting this orphaned shadow hunter boy, and just such heroics ensue, and the ending made my heart melt. It just did it for me. There is so much Alec and Magnus in this book, and it's healthy Alec and Magnus where they're communicating and you see why their relationship works, and you get to see Jem and Tessa and why their relationship still works now 100 years later. It is amazing, and you get more background on side characters from the Mortal Instruments, such as Lily Chen. You don't really know much of her history in the Mortal Instruments, and she is a prominent character mentioned throughout all of the books that take place after the Mortal Instruments, and so I think it's just really nice to know some of her backstory and to understand why she is the way she is or why she thinks the way she does. I loved that aspect, so definitely a 5 out of 5. All-time favorite out of the novellas she's released so far. I wouldn't mind more like it. Alright, so the fourth novella I read was Through Blood, Through Fire, and this one takes place after the events of Queen of Air and Darkness, so there will be some spoilers for that in this part. If you do not want to be spoiled for the Dark Artifices trilogy, please just skip ahead. So I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars, and this one follows Jem, Tessa, and Kit. It was so cute, and it really touched my heart. It just didn't reach that favorite, so it was a 4 out of 5 for me. The second to last novella I read was The Lost World, and this one actually follows Ty as he's at the Scholomance with Livia's ghost attached to his soul because he tried to resurrect Livia in the very end of Queen in Darkness, and it did not go the way it was supposed to. And so we see Livia as she is trying to grapple with the fact that she is able to see her family and her twin brother, but is not able to interact with anyone really other than Ty and a select few such as Magnus Bane. This one was really creepy to me. It had a lot darker of vibes, and you see Kit in this one too, and Tessa and Jem. Tessa is giving birth, and then Livia also visits the LA Institute and sees her family, but things really aren't going the way they should because she is not with Ty. Ty is still at the Scholomance, and she has traveled on her own there, and we can see her becoming less and less her the longer and farther she is away from Ty. And so for that reason, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I just did not expect it to be as creepy as it was. There were a few parts that were really kind of heartwarming, but overall vibe of it was just way too creepy for me. So 3 out of 5. So the last novella I read was called Forever Fallen, and it is the final novella out of the Ghost of the Shadow Market book. This one follows the Jace that we know from Thule in the Dark Artifices series. So it is not Jace Herondale as we know him from the Mortal Instruments, who is alive, in love with Clary, and living his life with all of his family. This is a Jace that lost everything and was attached to Sebastian emotionally for much longer than he was through the Mortal Instruments series. It is darker than I expected. It wasn't as creepy as The Lost World, but there was an aspect to it that kept me reading, and we got to see some more of Ash from the Dark Artifices as well, and he seems to be such an innocent character, but the fact that he wields so much power is very concerning. And personally, I thought the job of this novella was to keep readers extremely interested in the fact that there is to be one more trilogy before Cassie Clare stops writing in the Shadowhunter world, and that would be the Wicked Powers revolving around Ty, Kit, Drew, and Ash. And so I am very intrigued, and I think this novella did a great job at what I think it was supposed to do, and it made me anticipate the Wicked Powers and their release much more than I had been before, and it gave us kind of an insight into more so what the Wicked Powers could be about. And so because of that, I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, and there were aspects of it where we did see the real Jace Herondale, and we saw the real Alec and Magnus and their 2 children and their interactions together, and the Jace from Thule gets to interact with the Clary from the real world, and we see the emotional toll that it takes on him to know that Sebastian lied to him for so long, even though he trusted Sebastian. He shouldn't have, but he did. And how badly it hurt him and just his thought process, and how living in Thule changed how he reacted, because we know that Jace from the real world wouldn't react the same way that Jace from Thule is reacting to seeing Clary happy with another version of himself. Now, before we get into the novels that I read in the month of March, I just wanted to quickly go over and talk about the 2 mangas that I read through March. And I don't usually read a lot of mangas, but I recently found copies of this anime that I really enjoy in their original manga form, and so I couldn't resist getting them. I did only read the first 2 volumes, and so that is My Hero Academia Volume 1 and Volume 2. I gave the first one 5 out of 5 stars. I think the art style is gorgeous, and the story so far is really well thought out. And then I gave Volume 2 4 out of 5 stars. Again, the art style is absolutely gorgeous, and I loved the plot, but the author and illustrator brought in more inappropriate and crude humor into it for small aspects, and that kind of bugged me, and there were certain characters that I just really didn't like. So I am just hoping that that is not as often in the rest of the 29 volumes that are available. But we will see. I am very excited to read more of them. I do have the first 5 volumes of it, so I will definitely be reading more of them. Now onto the 5 novels I read. To start with, I started and finished Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassie Clare. I read this entire book in 2 days. I followed along in the book as I listened to the audiobook, and I do listen to my audiobooks at 2 times the speed. I would have listened to it faster, but I had purchased the audiobook through Apple Books, and so I did not have the option to listen to it any quicker than that. But I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars, and I could not stop sobbing my eyes out through the entirety of this. I think this one gave a perfect wrap up to the entire Dark Artifices trilogy, and it just hurt to read. There is so much pain and discourse between all of the characters, but I feel like the ending with Emma and Julian just not suffering any sort of consequence is kind of unrealistic, considering all of the other realistic aspects to this book, even though it is a fantasy book. But I can understand them not getting a punishment because of what it was like to go through it before everybody found out, which really should be a punishment enough, but in the real world they would still be punished, and so it just does not fit with the characterization of the Clave that they have presented to us. But that is just like a small fact that always gets me. It is still a 5 out of 5. It is an absolute favorite. I loved Kit and Ty, and oh, Livy killed me in this one. Emma and Julian, Christina, Mark, and Kieran. Oh, I read this one mostly for Christina, Mark, and Kieran. This trilogy is an Emma and Julian trilogy. It is a Blackthorn trilogy through and through. But I read this book for Mark, Kieran, and Christina. That is it. 5 out of 5, mostly for Mark, Kieran, and Christina. The second novel I read in the month of March was Red Scrolls of Magic, and I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. This is the first book in the Eldest Curses trilogy, which follows Alec and Magnus, and this one takes place actually smack dab in the middle of the Mortal Instruments series. This follows Alec and Magnus on their first vacation as a couple across Europe, and as they are in Paris, things take a turn and Magnus is accused of founding a demon-worshipping cult, and chaos ensues. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars because as a first book in a trilogy, it of course was harder to get into than say a sequel or a ending of a series. But that does not dismiss the fact that I absolutely loved all of the fight scenes that were there, which I didn't enjoy in the Mortal Instruments series, which is strange because this is set right in the middle. But we get to see Alec and Magnus as different sides of themselves that we don't see in the Mortal Instruments series. So it was a refreshing sight, and the relationship that progresses between Alec and Magnus is one that you don't get to see front and center in the other series. This one really allows us to see the changes and the growth that are made in this relationship, and it's nice to know where they started and know where they end. So I really enjoyed this one. It was a 4 out of 5. Other than the aspect of getting into it, it was a perfect read and it was fairly quick for me. The next one we have is Chain of Gold. This is my UK edition copy, and the only other copy of this I have is my advanced reader's copy, which I don't plan to get rid of because it is the only advanced reader's copy of a book that I have received, and it was amazing. But I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. It is amazing. One of the best starting books for a trilogy I have read, especially by Cassie Clare, even though it did take quite a few pages to actually start the story and move the plot forward. But there were a lot of aspects and characters that needed to be introduced before the plot could kick off. This book follows the children of the characters from the Infernal Devices. So we have the children of Will and Tessa, of Gabriel and Cecily, and of Gideon and Sophie, and of Charlotte and Henry. And so we have James and Lucy Herondale, we have Cordelia Carstairs and Alistair Carstairs, we have Matthew Fairchild, we have Christopher Lightwood, and we have Thomas Lightwood. And they all work together to solve all of the mishaps that are going on. So London has been in a period of relative peace where demons have been avoiding the city of London. And so this new generation of shadow hunters doesn't understand what it's like to lose people simply to on patrol for demons, just because demons do kill people. And suddenly they are faced with an attack by a new demon that they have not seen before, one that can withstand sunlight. And so we follow Cordelia as she is making her way through not only what it's like to live in London and be part of the London Society of Shadow Hunters, but also what it's like trying to fight off this new evil that they have no idea about. Directly following Chain of Gold, I hopped into the Lost Book of the White, which I have had since September when it came out because I had pre-ordered it. But I also bought the audiobook to this, so I listened to it side by side, so I finished it in about a day. And I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, again, just like the first book. This one was mostly because there were aspects in it that kind of confused me and made no sense. But the part in this book that made me cry was Simon. Simon will always make me cry. He is my absolute favorite and a comfort character that will always touch my heart and make me understand what he's going through, and it will be voiced and understood, which is something that I absolutely love. But I really did enjoy seeing the aspects of Alec and Magnus in this book focused solely on Alec and Magnus, and how having a child has kind of changed the relationship they have, but hasn't shifted the focus away from communication and being happy together and still being a couple. And the ending of this book actually gives you a kind of dun 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 factor, other than the short story at the end after the epilogue. The short story was super sweet. I loved it, and it kind of gives the fans the theory that they had about Tessa's wedding to Jem. It was very sweet, but the epilogue gets you worried for the third and final book of the Eldest Curse series. So again, this was a 4 out of 5 star read. I definitely recommend this trilogy, especially for fans of Alec and Magnus and wanting to see more of their life together, and more so of the lives of the other shadow hunters from the Mortal Instruments series, because they are present and mentioned a whole bunch. They are still very relevant to Alec and Magnus's life, so of course we are going to know more about them in the Eldest Curse series. The final book that I started and finished in the month of March, Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. I have no words. This is of course a 5 out of 5 star. I watched every live show and every free live stream that Cassie Clare did, and every interview she had that was free for my access, and I was warned. The ending of this book hurts just about as much as the ending of Clockwork Prince. Why I did not believe her, I don't know. She wrote the books. She knows the emotional trauma that is left with the readers after every single book, after every ending. She knows. She warned us. I did not listen. I sat in my bed after finishing this one for half an hour, sobbing with a physical pain in my chest. The ending still hurts to think about. Cordelia, I love her, but god damn, if she's going to eavesdrop, she needs to do it correctly and listen to everything. Okay? James, I get you're getting back to yourself, but he needs to drop some of the sarcasm, because if he hadn't used sarcasm in the conversation that he was having at the end of this book, Cordelia would not have run off because of a misunderstanding. And Matthew, sweet boy, all I want is for him to be happy. That is your best friend's wife. Wife, not girlfriend, not crush, wife. And Lucy, honey, you're an author, not a character in your novels. Stop it. And Christopher Lightwood is getting a crush on Grace Blackthorne, and that's how they connect on the family tree. That is why it says they are married on the family tree. That is why it says they reproduce together, because they do, because they like each other, and they actually like each other. And everybody in their reviews likes to say, well, Lucy is trying to bring Jesse Blackthorne back from the dead. Did you miss the last 100 pages of this book? Lucy is an all-powerful god with no brains. She can write. She has undeniable power, but no brains. And poor Malcolm. God damn, his heart was broken. Grace has no social cues. She does not understand them because of Tatiana. I swear to God, if Tatiana was a real person, I would square up on spot. No doubt. This book, 5 out of 5. Most definitely. I loved it from beginning to end. There was nothing in here that I did not like. You know, other than Grace, but I kind of liked Grace now. I don't know. Tatiana is really the only person in here that I don't like and don't sympathize with. Belial, I can get a little bit. Lilith, she hates Belial. So, other than that, Tatiana is the only person that I actually hate with no way to feel sympathy for. So, 5 out of 5. Perfect from beginning to end. But let me know if you have any different thoughts on this, because I thought this was a great sequel. And yes, this is... Cassie Clare is known for her sequels being the makeout book, and this one is no different. No different. Be prepared, because these should be new adult and not YA. Just saying, these books should be new adult and not YA. So I just wanted to quickly breeze over the fact that I started a book directly following Chain of Iron because the heartbreak it left me with was so bad I needed a distraction. And so I picked up City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab, and I know this is a middle grade book. I don't usually read middle grade books, but I love them. They are so easy to read and very quick. I haven't read anything today, but I read all of this in one day. I read 111 pages in one day, and that was while doing 100 different things in between and before and after. This really only took me a few hours to read that small bit scattered throughout doing other tasks. So this is a quick read, and I'm really enjoying it so far. It's really well thought out. I'm loving the plot and the characters. It's a lighthearted read that I needed to distract me from Chain of Iron. I have to wait a year for Chain of Thorns. I don't know if I can do it. We will see. But I'm enjoying this, and I hope to finish it really soon so that I can read some more books for the month of April. Alright guys, that was it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know down in the comment section below if you read any of the same books as me this month, or if you read what felt like not very much and then realized you did read a lot, or just simply what you were able to read this month and what you thought about it. I'm curious to see what everybody was able to read in March.